This conference will now be recorded.
If at any time you guys do have questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat or feel free to come off of mute and let me know that you have questions. So today, on the main focus of this training portion is going to be on submitting your end of the year reporting reports. The due date for submission is going to be October 20th. So again, for this training, what I will plan on doing is walking through how the steps to submit. Then I am going to shift over and actually demo how you submit. And then we'll do any time for questions about submission as well as any of the other Q&A. So the first thing we wanted to review is if your project does actually have to submit a report. So a few of the requirements, if your project is one of the required types, so street outreach, shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, or any of the other permanent housing types, regardless of funding, you may be required to participate. If that project that you have is one of those and your project was included on the housing inventory chart or will be this year, you are likely to have to submit for that project. And finally, if your project was operational after October 2020, if you're in orange COC, or if it was operational after October 2021 for Balance or Durham, then yes, the project is required. You should have gotten an email from us at the very beginning of this process. As an agency admin, you should have received the email, and we actually line out the specific project ID numbers for your projects that are required to submit. So we did try to provide you that information up front so that it's a little less kind of guesswork. All right, so how to actually submit this report. Submissions are going to be done via a Smartsheet form. Again, agency admins, that initial email that we sent out, there is a link within that email, and it does go directly to the submission form. You will need to send in a separate submission for each project. So for instance, if you're an agency that has 3 projects that are required to submit, you will have to do 3 separate submissions, one for each of your projects. The information that you submit through the LSA submission form, it does have to actually match what's on your HMIS form. So for instance, if you pulled an HMIS report for a very specific project with a very specific name, very specific project ID number, that report needs to be included only for the submission for that specific project. So for instance, if I have an emergency shelter and my project ID is 2000, when I do my LSA submission for my emergency shelter for project 2000, the reports that I submit also have to be for that specific project. So just know that when you submit, you have to submit with the proper reports for that specific project. Okay, so I'm going to walk through this. These are the basic steps when you are actually submitting the report. So I'm going to walk you guys through each of the items that are on the submission form. And then again, I'm going to demo it so you can actually see it live. So the first part that is on the sheet, it's going to ask you for which project type you are submitting. So if you're submitting for your shelter or you're submitting the reports for your outreach or any of these project types, you will be selecting which project type your project is. As the submitter, we are asking that you include your name and your email. That's so that if we have questions about the report that was submitted, we know exactly who we need to reach out to. For each required report that you are expected to run for that specific project, you will have to tell us for that report one of these options. Is your report completely error-free? So that basically means there is nothing red, there is nothing highlighted, everything is okay on your report. The other option is that it does contain errors, but you have verified that they're accurate as the agency admin. So an example of that could be that you had a couple of clients who reported that they didn't know their socials. And so on the report, it's showing as an error because a client doesn't know. You would select that, yes, we are verifying that there are some errors, but what is listed that they didn't know is true. The next option is that it contains some errors that should have been cleared out, but you've reached out to us at the data center. We've talked you through it. We've worked with you and we've let you know, okay, we're expecting to see that error on the report. So go ahead and submit it and we'll work with you moving forward. It should be a pretty rare circumstance that occurs, but I do know just from me being on help desk the past couple of days, I do know that I've worked with a couple agencies where there are some very unique circumstances where those errors we are aware of and we're working with the agency on that. The fourth option is there are errors on there. The agency admin, you haven't reached out to us for support, but we know that we need to submit the report anyways. That one really is one we really want you to be reaching out to us for assistance before you're submitting reports with errors on it. But obviously, we have to have that as an option. So please, please, please look at your reports in advance, reach out to us in advance so that we can work with you so that you don't have to choose that as an option. And finally, the last one is if you happen to have a project where you actually didn't serve any clients and that report is pulling up blank because you didn't serve clients, we want to know that as well. Again, that's a pretty rare circumstance, but it does happen from time to time where your project opens on, say, July 1st, but you haven't served any clients yet because of some like red tape kind of things where you haven't necessarily gotten under contract or you haven't been able to serve any of your clients yet. So know that that is an option as well. Excuse me. One of the final steps is actually to upload your reports. So you've already said that this is for example, an emergency shelter. This is my contact information. I have said for each of the reports if we're error free or if there is an error that I am unable to change and I've either gotten permission or it's like a client doesn't know, doesn't refuse kind of question. Now I need to actually upload the reports for this project that came out of HMIS. There is basically a drop spot where you can either drag and drop or you can select to browse files and select the reports that you need for that specific project in order for it to be uploaded. And finally, there's a place for you to either ask questions or provide comments. So it can either be you're providing feedback on the process, or say you did have some additional questions and you needed us to reach out to you, or even if you are providing further explanation for any of the reports to say, we're aware that there are 10 people who left to an unknown destination. This is your spot to kind of give us additional information that could be helpful for us as we're doing our reviews. And finally, there's a little checkbox where you can actually tell the system to send you a copy of your responses. That way you do have a record that you actually did the submission. And then finally, you'll click submit. When you click submit, we are notified at the help desk that we have a submission to review, and then whoever is assigned to review your specific agency's projects, we will go in, take a look, see if everything is kind of as we anticipated. And if we have additional questions, we basically will be in contact with you over the following 2 weeks just to get any kind of clarity or ask any questions that we might have. All right, so before we get to questions, I'm going to switch over to doing a demo. Give me 1 second. All right, so the link that you were provided as an agency admin, this will take you here to this submission form. So again, you will do one submission form per project. The submission due date is Thursday, October 20th. So we're going to come down here. The first thing you're going to do is type in your agency's name, type in the name of your project, and finally type in your project ID. The project ID in the system, if you're looking at your report or if you're looking in the system, it will actually be the number that's at the very end, that's in parentheses. Again, we provided you the ID numbers in the original email that we sent out. So you can also look there to know which project IDs you are required to submit for. Then for your project type, you will select what project type you are submitting for. This should match whatever project you're actually submitting for. So if this was, say, an emergency shelter, I would switch this to emergency shelter. Finally, you as the submitter, we want your information again. So if we do need to reach out to you, we actually know who we need to reach out to. The first one you will need to verify is that LSA annual review audit report. This report is required for submission by all project types. So again, you're going to come down here and you're going to say, is this report error free? The one that you pulled out of HMIS, does it contain any kind of errors that you have verified? Again, that's going to be a lot of client reviews, doesn't know. For this report, it's mostly going to be client reviews, doesn't know. But really an annual review assessment, you really shouldn't have any of that because you're required to do an annual review on your client. So I'm going to say that my report is my submission, it has an error-free report because I fixed everything and my HMIS report now is clean. The second report is going to be your client data cleanup report. So that one is kind of that massive report that has multiple tabs on it. Again, you're going to say how you're verifying it. So in this case, I'm going to pretend that, I do have a couple of clients because I'm street outreach. I have a couple of clients who did refuse some information or didn't know some information. So I'm going to say that I'm verifying that information. So I know that there are things on there that are still flagging, but I know that that's truly what the client had said. And finally, because I selected I am a street outreach project, I also have to submit the street outreach date of engagement. So again, I have to say for this street outreach date of engagement report, how is this report looking? Again, it is error-free. And finally, I need to upload my reports. So I can either go grab the reports and then drag and drop them here, or I'm just going to click Browse Files. And I'm going to go to where my files are stored, and I'm going to select all 3 files for my street outreach project. I can see that all 3 files are now here. I can type in any questions that I have. I'm just going to say testing for training. And then I'm going to click this little button because I actually do want a copy of my responses. I want to make sure that everything went okay. Or if you happen to be the submitter, but you're not the agency admin, so maybe the agency admin has tapped you to do the submission and they want a copy of the responses, you can type in their email address there. And finally, I just simply hit submit. It will process, it will tell you that everything went through and you are done for that project. Now, if I have to do another project, say I just did for street outreach, say I had a rapid rehousing project, I would need to go back to my submission link and then do a separate submission for my rapid rehousing project. All right, so just to kind of recap some history kind of stuff, whoever was identified as your agency admin, you should have received an email from our team from the data center. It would have either come from Brandy, Daisha, Jessica, myself, or Nicole. And it was titled Action Steps for 2022 Annual Reporting Data Cleanup. That is where it will list out what projects are expected, what reports are needed. A lot of it will have links to these past trainings, and it also has that link to your submission form. So please know that that is where we try to bundle it all into like one communication. Uh, if you do have questions, please feel free to either respond to that specific email that we had sent out, or just email us at the help desk. We're happy to set up time to talk with you or answer your question via email. If you do communicate with us, make sure that you let us know like which project you're working on, which report you're working on. Ideally, you should be scheduling those reports so that we can go in and shadow you and we have the ability to see the specific report. And again, if there is a specific client ID that is kind of showing the error and you're like, this is an example of a client I need you to look at, please let us know the ID number and specifically what error we should be looking for. All right, so I basically that's the submission process, but I want to take a few minutes to answer any questions specific to the submission process. Once those questions are out of the way, then we can open it up for general Q&A. So I'm going to pause and just see, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to flip over and see if there's anything in the chat. Are we allowed to submit the report via the Smartsheet prior to 10/12? Or I'm sorry, but prior to October 20th? Yes. If your project has completed all of the necessary reports and all of the necessary reports are clean, you can submit those reports prior to that deadline. So the link is live. You can submit at any point. You just, again, have to make sure that all of your reports that are required for that project are ready to be sent in. Right. So there is a specific question that is not related to the submission process. So just know I'm going to hold on to that question, and I will answer that as soon as I make sure that, and if anybody else has any questions specific to the submission piece. And again, feel free to either drop it in the chat or you can come off of mute. As far as the character limitation for the feedback, I'd have to double check it. I did not look at that specifically, but I don't believe that there's necessarily a character limit. I would say, probably not, you shouldn't have it be like 4 paragraphs. But if for some reason you are getting to a point where it isn't allowing you to do more, maybe just put in a line that, hey, I'm going to send in the ticket to help desk and you can kind of give us more detail if needed. But I don't know the character limit because that's one piece that I didn't look at, Jessica actually created the form, but I don't think that there's a character limit on it. Okay, seeing no more additional questions specific to the submission portion, I'm going to just open it up to general Q&A. Robin, I'm going to start with your question. So I'm actually going to stop my sharing for the moment. So the question that is in the chat is that several of there are mistakes popping up related to relationship to head of household. So there's a couple of things. This may or may not be specific to you, Robin. So if what I share is not the solution, please feel free to reach out to help desk so we can work one-on-one with a few examples. But the first thing I would always suggest is when it comes to relationship to head of household errors, one, double check your report. So when you pull the report, there are basically two really important prompts that need to be filled out. The first is going to be that provider prompt. So you're going to say what one specific project it is, but you also do have to fill out the EDA prompt, and it has to match your one provider. So your EDA provider and your provider prompts have to be the same project. If they're not the same, we do know that that is going to cause errors because of visibility. So that's the first step, is always check that the prompts for provider and EDA provider are the same one project. The second thing that I probably would kind of just suggest is look
Hey, Katie. I don't know if you can hear me, but we can't hear you.